I want to start with a tree poem, since the poem that Marcia read of Jackson's started there. I grew up in the city of Detroit, and when I moved to California, I had to sort of learn to love nature, which sounds funny. And when I was in graduate school, so this is 25 years ago, my professor said, everybody who moves here, and I was living in New York then, said, everybody who moves here writes about the ocean, so please try not to write about the ocean. And I was a very dutiful student, and I was, okay, and so no ocean. And then I went to a reading down in Laguna Beach, which had a lot more bookstores then than it does now. There was an open reading down there at Fahrenheit 451, no longer exists. And a guy got up there and said, well, I guess every poet has a Grand Canyon poem, so this is my Grand Canyon poem. And I thought, okay, check, no Grand Canyon poems. So, I move out here, and rather than my subject matter becoming more expansive, in some sense it contracted for a little while there. But indeed, I did learn to love nature, although I've spent so much of my life in cities. And this poem is called Shinas Mole, which is, you'll hear what it is in the first line. The pepper tree looked like a child drew it with a compass, wheel round and green, not moss or hunter, jade or forest, teal or camouflage, a green describing nothing else, defining more state of mind than hue. The man atop the hill, concerned about his view, came down the hill, as rich people sometimes do. This was his due, he pointed out, according to the rules of the neighborhood association, shades of something sinister, prescribes for how to keep the peace when interests compete. I like the peace. I like competing too. I like my pepper tree, the shape it carved out of the blue. Admittedly, it rose above the meeting of our lot lines, intruding on his vision of a slice of somewhere he has never gone, but only slightly. In lieu of all horizon, as if anyone can take it in its entirety. He'd see a swath of bright, bright green, white flowers in the summer, rosy berries in the fall, pardesse, I think, alongside sky, the empty infinite, the endlessness his property entitles him to. As for my lot, I'd like some privacy. I want the pepper tree, not him, to watch me rattle off my spells, concoct my brew, and I'll admit to an old school affection, beauty. Would he know it if he saw it? Said Justice Stewart of obscenity. The branches crash upon my ivy, and a stump remains, pale revenant, a few anemic limbs. I know the hired men don't mean to give offense. I don't shake my fist at them, but at the ornamental iron now revealed. If it were post or picket, would I mind as much? I am fenced in, fenced out, pissed off, and still the chainsaw serenades me with its roars and pauses, the hummingbirds displaced, distressed, their feverish flights to find another home. I will not move, though my impermanence is not in doubt. I read the fragile branches give their water to the leaves, allow themselves to hollow out, be snapped by coastal winds. Such sacrifice. Would altruism move him? I want the man atop the hill to see the view he craves as best when glimpsed, a happy accident, instead of present on display. And so there must be leaves and branches to see through. Frost's protean voice murmurs in my ear. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me. But all he knows is what he's bought. Tonight, the darkness comes a little closer, and he has bought the absence of a tree. No, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm interested in hope. The idea of hope I find really fascinating and often troubling. So I write about hope sometimes in sort of oblique terms, but I have a couple of hope poems, and I thought maybe they would talk to each other if I read them together. So this is the newest one. It's called In the Optative Mode. In the optative mode, you hope. That is the job. You may or may not believe all things tend toward ultimate good. Then you would be an agathist. I like that crowd. They are not too good looking, nor do they think all things for the best. In topology, a mug is homeomorphically equal to a donut. They can be deformed into one another without breaking, cutting, punching holes, or gluing. I do not know what I am equal to. And such properties of space only seem relevant when I am eating breakfast, employing mug and donut. A coincidence? Perhaps. Science does not need hope. Both need and want were both employed as pearl earring rounders at the turn of the century, so they have plenty to discuss over a mug of joe. In the optative mode, an orrery, which shows the relative positions of planets and moon, heliocentric, allows us to imagine ourselves in the sky with Deus absconditus, who is slightly better company than Deus odiosus. One hidden to us by intention, the other idle, tired, a slacker, supplanted by a newer model. My hope is for the hidden, because you can always choose to be found. And I find, at broken moments, slight evidence of the replacement. It's not really a very hopeful poem. I'm sorry. My God is dead, and I don't think he's coming back. Okay, great. All right. To Hope Street. I taught many years ago. I teach at Cal State Long Beach, and I love, go beach. I don't know if I have any beach. I love teaching at Cal State Long Beach. My students are amazing. Before that, I actually taught it at USC. And every time I got off the freeway at USC, I would see this sign, a little green sign with white letters that said, To Hope Street. And it was very obscure. It was sort of right here. And then right in front of me was the DMV, which I found. And every time I got to the freeway for 3 years, 2 days a week, I would do this. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't stop myself. It was this, because I just, the juxtaposition was always so striking to me. So this is called To Hope Street. And I grew up in Detroit, I think, as I might have said. There's some street names in here from there that you'll hear. Actually, the major thoroughfares in Detroit are named for their distance from the Detroit River. To Hope Street. Where I grew, roads named for their distance from the river, 6 mile, 7 mile, 8 mile, and the solemnity of numbers showed resistance to artifice. Where I live are neighborhoods of streets named for precious gems, ruby, sapphire, pearl, and flowers, poppy, camellia, lilac, displays plush enough to harbor a felon should the getaway car expire. Here, even stucco buds, tax dollars at play. Usually it seems like hope wends places deloused of such luxury. The drag from east origin to west destiny, towns with city councils that meet in holy donut shops. Here west means you're going toward the ocean, and east means go back from whence you came. I cannot go back, and neither can you. It does not exist. Those bustling main streets rusted over, Forlorn chassis in the Midwestern winter, dead-ending into a field reclaimed by attitudes of grass along a highway that pulled a number so great it would surely be conscripted. The dead and dying parade their nostalgia down it wearing floats, risen above the fashioned facts of memory. The street develops amnesia, forgets its faults, dreams of asphalt patch. Does lane aspire to avenue, circle to thoroughfare? I cannot help thinking that the street named Hope has something to offer. Something prophetic, something narcotic. I cannot help thinking, though I can't say it's time well spent. Ignominious hope, pedestrian hope. A street is defined by its bounds, two sides to every story. Abandon all hope, ye who enter the billboard outside hell, according to the man who layered hell like a taco salad. If it will make you feel better, you can cry on the shoulder of the road. Thank you. I want to read a poem written in inherited form, which is to say rhyming quatrains. This is a sophisticated poetry group listening, but when you're reading poetry of the people who don't often read poetry, if you don't read something that rhymes, they sort of leave with this "what did I hear?" feeling, and you know what? I'm not above that myself, So every now and then I think, what did I hear? So I think it's fair. And so this is called "What I Disliked About the Pleistocene Era." So there you go. The pastries. I love the word pastries. And my students will tell you at Long Beach that I'm obsessed with the word cruller. They're like, she likes the word cruller. I also like the word compote, because it's sort of, it's a good word, isn't it? It's sort of a dactyl, like not quite. Like you don't hit the com as hard as you hear the pote. But how many English words have pote in them? Compote. It's a Yiddish word, it's a compote, and it's like a fruit mixture if you've never had it. It doesn't taste very good, but we eat it anyway. So there's always things in cultures that you eat anyway, right? So anyway, the pastries were awfully dry. An absence of hummingbirds of any humming, and birds' lead feathers made it difficult to fly. Clouds had not yet learned to clot, billow, represent. Stars unshot, anonymous, moon and sun indifferent. No one owned a house, a pond, a rock on which to rest your head. No ark, no here then there. Beginning meant alive, the end meant dead. Art still a ways away, no liar. Beauty, an accident. Needs and wants bundled like twigs, then set on fire, except no fire. Candles had no wicks, fruit lacked seed, books bereft of plot. Ornament and condiment were empty cisterns. There were pots. It was pure act, no motivation, consequence, imagination. Sometimes a flare, a glow, a gleam, no questions asked, no revelation. An eye was not yet capital I, still just an eye. No mouth, no verb, no am to carry dark from day, dirt or sea from sky. God not God until one dove called out, "Where the hell's dry land?" An answer formed, a raven shrugged and towed a line across the sand. Knew the sand, knew the vast notion of this long division, knew the understanding that this time there would be no revision. I wanted to read, I have this series in this book, my third book. I actually have 4 books out, and the fourth is called Perfecta, but my third book is called Hilarity. And the funny thing is about Hilarity is that it's probably my least funny book. It's not very funny. And when the designers called me, like it's funny to me, like in that previous poem, when I said, there were cisterns, there were pots. Like, to me, you write to amuse yourself, ultimately. That's sort of a yuck fest line, because the whole poem says really, there's nothing, nothing, nothing. Oh, there's pots. There's ceramics. You know what I mean? It's like for me, that's funny, but the whole book is that kind of funny, like funny in my head, but funny really to nobody else. And that's okay. That's all right. This is from a little series of poem. When I was in graduate school in the early 90s, I read The Wild Iris. I sort of memorized The Wild Iris, Louise Glick's book, which I loved so much. And, and I was so inspired by her, I actually went to hear her read the whole of The Wild Iris at UCLA. I think it was at Royce Hall at UCLA, and I'd driven up, and, she's very formidable. She's this big, but she's very formidable, presence. And she read the whole book in this sort of Glick way that people don't really quite read poetry anymore. And I think if she were sitting back there, I'd still say this, with that sort of pause at the end, everything's very meaningful. And you know what I mean? Like, we don't really do that anymore, I don't think. But what that book did was kind of gave me license, like, you can be God in a poem. You can just pretend to be God. How cool is that? Because in that book she does. She's a flower, she's God, she's the gardener. It was very, I think for a lot of people, that book, kind of opened up possibility. It's not that she was the first that did it. She just did it so authoritatively, So this series of poems, I'm just going to read one of them, is sort of, again, from the point of view of God, and I'm just going to read one of them. It's called Sand. It's not mine, but I should have seen it coming. The gradual pulverizing, Eventually it will all disappear, as will you. I did not mean for everything to get smaller. I did not mean for the rich richer and the poor poorer, nor for everything to be fair, though my translators bandy about justice and righteousness with abandon, as though words were meant to correlate to thoughts, as though ideas matter and things matter. Do dunes compensate? I did not invent intent. You did. And the way indented footprints disappear on the ocean's arrival, that was yours too. How eloquent. Thank you. I'm going to read a couple of poems from Perfecta, which is the book that came out actually in 2014. And it came out from What Books Press down in Venice, and which is Gail Ronsky's press. And the artist Gronk does the covers. And so so this is my cover, and I'm just braggy about it because I think it's so beautiful. And I got to tell you, it was quite a buzz going to his studio, and they said, you're going to he's going to help you pick your cover. And I was sort of intimidated to meet him, and he's nice, very nice man, and he has this stack of paintings, and he's like, well, what do you think of any of these? I read the book, and I said, and I'm like, oh my God, I get to just pick a painting. And then he said, how about this corner? It's a very social book. This book for me is really about, when Marcia says, and my fabulous kids, like this book is in certain ways really about sort of how to exist in the social world when it's really not your impulse, it's really something, a kind of a learned skill. And the social world has all sorts of obviously this is sort of a gossipy, not people's best instincts cover. So he picked a corner of a painting and said, what if we take this corner of the painting and make that the cover and wrap it around, which is what happens. So that was just a very cool experience. Thank you. And I really loved that experience. So it's really, which is to say, it's such a pleasure to read here, because this exhibit, if you guys haven't had a chance to look at it, is quite gorgeous. And it's always really inspiring to be able to read surrounded by visual art. I'm going to read a poem called Circus. In this book, there's about a half dozen poems where the poem hugs the right margin instead of the left margin, and this is one of them. My students, when you teach, they want you to be able to tell them why, you do things as a poet. And I try. I have a whole lot of answers to why. I talk a lot in my class, and I tell them why. But for this one, I can honestly say that I pushed the text over to the right margin to sort of see how it felt and to see what would be, and to see in a way how it kind of played with the space. And I liked the effect, and it's interesting, is it's something I'm working with a little bit more, just to sort of working with white space. I used to honestly, it's funny how you evolve as a poet. When I was younger, I thought it was sort of a trick. I thought, oh, why are you messing with white space? Like, aren't your words good enough? I really felt that way. I thought it was like, it's a gimmick, I don't feel that way anymore, which is nice just because it shows me that I'm changing as a poet and that I'm kind of accepting, and it opens up possibility. Circus. We pass a huge tent with turrets on our way to Grandma's house. There is no wolf here, nor no cape or hood. Only ornate horses, beery clowns, happy family acrobats, vendors of ferocity. I tell my children the circus has 3 rings. The only parents who told their kids anything when I was growing up were groovy. They were pals, confidants. They did not embarrass their children, as is a parent's obligation. I want my children to tell me everything. My hearing is considerably better than my husband's. He's troubled by ambient noise. I hear the air move, the particles chatting. I hear the chair say to the table, "What's new?" The plaid says to the stripe, "I am the pattern here." A shoelace yearning to be tied, the little fricatives at the end of sentences, unintended sighs. Please don't confuse hearing with listening. I did not say, I am a good listener. These are entirely different skill sets, as the marketing geniuses say. I can spell Mississippi very quickly, do a time step, thumb wrestle, sing Surrey with the fringe on top, and question my faith in the decency of human nature, all at the same time. I can drive with my knees, leaving my hands free to gesture at neighboring vehicles. When the right-hand mirror talks to the distance, it says, "I know you are closer than you look." The distance is taciturn. It's tactic, emotional blackmail, the silent treatment. There's salt back there. In 1963, my Uncle Denny heard a young Barbra Streisand audition in a club in downtown Detroit. You knew she was a star, he said. I was entranced by the mobile, pictures of ducks that swayed above my head. I was not a child of the 60s, but a child in the 60s. Prepositions make all the difference. As does this versus that, as do articles, a versus the general versus the particular, the random versus the chosen. A clown is scary, the clown is scary. We sit in the dark to watch the spectacle. We sit in the dark. We think about doing our taxes. The shapes and lights travel across our line of vision after the source is gone. It's an optical trick, but a good one. I hate magicians. And like all sensible people, mimes. Right? In a brief, desperate time, I dated a professional funny man, a clown of sorts. My relationship with humor has become quite strained. I can barely stand wit. Even charm is suspect if it sneaks up on you. I don't carry mace, but once I did in a dream. Of course, my attacker turned it on me, and I woke up failing to see. I woke myself up by screaming. If you were that funny, they used to call you a scream. My daughter woke up screaming. Children are born mimics. They can build a wall with their hands without any bricks, and almost lose control of a balloon, and find chewing gum on their heels with expressions too big for their faces. When they call your husband's name, you hear the shrillness in your own voice. I'm going to close with the last poem in my first book. My first book is called Diasporatic, and it is what one of my mentors, poet and translator Richard Howard, called a nonce coinage, which I love that. It's a made-up word. But he said, "Dear, you used a nonce coinage." I don't know if I thought it was a nonce coinage when I made it up. I think I thought it was a word. That's all right. This is called concatenate. And one of the other concerns that goes through my work is the issue of free will, which I'm very concerned with. Concatenate. There is nothing wrong with this night. There is nothing wrong that I can't reconcile. Frogs soprano, doves alto, shed doors straining against the steel chain that forces them together when they'd rather go their own ways. Dissonance of heat in the dark. Ceiling fan making particles mingle that would choose to stay separate if they had the power of choice. Tonight, I am the animating factor. Tonight, I am the little god, nominated by my screen door, clicking open, shut, open in an almost danceable rhythm of its own volition, one of the many beneficiaries of free will, one of the victims. Thank you.